There are a lot of new retro video game consoles. Sometimes these systems are officially released by companies such as Sega and Nintendo, to name a few, whilst others go down a, let's say, more unofficial route. For example, this is the Retro Freak, a system that can play classic Sega, Nintendo and NEC titles, and it does so thanks to emulation. And then you got far more niche and expensive systems such as this. This is Analog's Mega SG with the Mega SD on top by Terra Onion, and this, the Super NT, again by Analog. These systems are not emulated products because they include FPGA chips, aka filled programmable gate array chips. What's the difference? Well, to the average hardcore non-retro gamer that just wants a quick blast on that game they used to play 30 or 40 years ago, not a whole lot. No matter what system you pick up, they all do the same thing. But unsurprisingly, the FPGA powered systems do it better. That's because, in basic terms, these FPGA chips allow the programmer to essentially replicate the original hardware as opposed to emulation, which attempts to emulate the software to allow it to be played on hardware that it was never meant to play on. In short, a lot of people believe that these FPGA powered systems, when done right, are not only on par with the original hardware, but they're actually better. Yes, this is all very debatable, but what's not debatable is just how popular FPGA-powered retro machines have become. We can spend all day arguing which is better or who did it best, but for today's video, I want to ask a different question. How do companies like Analog get away with releasing these definitely unofficial products? I mean, they are quite literally selling you hardware with the sole purpose of playing other companies' video games. Well, the answer is simple. There's no hardware stealing going on here, there's no software stealing going on here, and again, more importantly for this video, there's no branding stealing either. Nobody is buying this and thinking that it's an official Sega product. The companies keep a safe distance from each other and everybody walks away mostly happy. Well, almost everyone. You see, there was one company that during 2024 and early 2025 wanted to release a product that was so goddamn close to Sega's beautiful iconic logo that, to the uninitiated, this just may be an official Sega product. The Super Sega. And yes, that was the font they used, was an unofficial, absolutely in no way connected to Sega, new retro FPGA system that not only had the potential to upset the Hedgehog house, but also confuse consumers with its branding too. But that's not all, as it also baffled the entire FPGA community, as it allowed retro gamers to play every single game for almost every single Sega system ever released, including the Dreamcast. In short, this was going to be the best ever Sega system ever released. It's an achievement that even the most hardcore nerdy FPGA core developer wasn't anywhere close to completing themselves. But of course, it was a load of rubbish. The SUPERSEGA Scandal is a story full of lies, manipulation, camera trickery, and the most unhinged spokesperson this side of a junior backgammon championship. In actual fact, Alejandro Martin, the guy behind the SUPERSEGA from Spain, may just be the most confusing individual that I've ever covered on this channel. We have a whole lot to cover here today, and as usual on Slope's Game Room, the best way to tell a story as in depth as this one is to go all the way back to the beginning. And what better place to start off than the 17th of June 2024, when I got my first email from one Alejandro Martin promoting the Super Sega. Good morning, I'm writing to you briefly to explain that we have a retro console type hardware project FPGA-ASIC underway that is compatible with all Sega generations, a kind of Spectrum ZX Next, but for Sega, allowing you to insert cartridges and cards and with some new features. My name is Alejandro and I'm adding you as a contact so I can inform you of the progress that occurs. And just to be clear, I never signed up to get these emails. Alejandro obviously went over to my channel and saw that I do a lot of Sega related content and on my behalf put my email down. Thanks. And I gotta be honest, at the time I do remember opening up this email and having a look-see, but I never got back in touch as... One, like I said, I already owned a Mega SG and the Mega SD, which as stated is a very well made FPGA powered system that covers the first half of what the Super Sega was offering. And two, that logo and name. Instantly this thing screamed unprofessional, as it was obviously not going to be getting very far when it not only used Sega's iconic font, but also Sega's iconic name.
That's no good.
The next email came in a week later, this time sent by Alejandro's sister Christine, even though it was still signed by Alejandro. Here we get to see the first CAD drawing like pictures of the device, and for any classic Sega fans watching, you'll notice a striking resemblance to the original Master System, which I suspect just may be intentional. More info on why a little later on in the video. Even though the gallery never existed in the first place from what I remember on that second email, the PDF bio did. And it still does. In said press release, we get to discover a whole lot more info on this upcoming device. This all-in-one Sega console, abbreviated to AIOSC, was going to start fundraising that year in 2024. As discussed, it would play all of Sega's games, including the SC3000, the SG1000, Master System, Mega Drive, Saturn, and the Dreamcast. No mention of the Mega CD, the Game Gear, or the Pico though, I'd like to add. Now, the reason I was laughing when I said the Dreamcast was because this was the one system that was highly unlikely to be working on that console. Why? Because of what the games were stored on. Not CD-ROMs, but GD-ROMs. For those that don't know, GD-ROMs are about 90% different than normal CDs. If you put a GD-ROM, specifically a Dreamcast game, into a CD player, it'll play like your standard audio CD, with an audio track telling you not to play it on such a system.
This is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers. Please stop this disc now.
See? Because when you turn a Dreamcast game upside down, you will notice that all of the data is saved in different sections. The inner section, that's what we've just heard. Think of it as the world's slimmest music CD. You then have a small island in the middle, and in fact, if you get the reflection just right, you can actually read Sega's name. Pretty cool, huh? And then you get the outer section, the bulk of the CD, which, as you may have guessed, stored the game data. GD-ROMs still to this day are not readable on standard PCs. Well, not outside of that tiny little audio section. Yes, you may find a wallpaper or two, but practically no standard disk drives could read the all-important game section. This was done to help prevent the Dreamcast from playing pirated discs. However, hackers very quickly worked out how to get around this. But what's more important for this video is that it also worked the other way around. There were a few on the market that could, but as these GD-ROMs became more and more obsolete, there were very few disk drives on the market that could actually read these things. Except of course for whatever they've put into the Super Sega. Thankfully, this PDF also explains that an SD card is also available to load up your ROMs and your ISOs, but still, it kinda defeats the object if it can't play real Dreamcast games, doesn't it? The other reason people were skeptical was because the Dreamcast was notoriously hard to get working on an FPGA chip. In fact, to this date, as of the recording of this video, nobody's ever been able to do it to a decent level. Except of course whoever was working on the Super Sega. We also discovered that the system will feature Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and not only will the SD card slot be a reader, but a writer too, as will the CD and DVD drive. Yes, move aside analog. Because apparently on the Super Sega, you're going to be able to write your games onto the card and onto CDs too. We even get a picture of what could possibly be the board, although unsurprisingly with a quick reverse image search we're all able to see that this is actually a Vertex Ultrascale Plus 56G PAM4 VCU129 FPGA evaluation kit. In other words, it's an extremely high-end FPGA board that costs roughly £20,000. Meaning that at best, this was just placeholder imagery and not at all what was going to be in the system. We get dimensions and a few more pictures, but most importantly, we get our first pic of Alejandro in a plane. I remember being a little bit confused at the time when I opened up this email, like, who is this dude and why is he in a plane? Little did I know that I would get to know him very, very well. The press release continues with confirmation from his sister saying that the Super Sega will not go down the crowdfunding route until a fully working prototype is finished. And they supposedly have everything up to Sega Saturn working in a playable state, as well as a few Dreamcast games too. So far, so good. This is something the team have been working on for several years according to this PDF. And according to Alejandro, the price of FPGA has gone down so much that now is the time to finally be able to replicate Dreamcast behaviours. Then it ends with a link to the website which supposedly will soon feature materials, documents and interviews. However, at this point in time, it's nothing more than some text that reads Super Sega all-in-one consoles with an email to go alongside it. Now, before we go ahead, I think this is the perfect time to look into who Alejandro Martin actually is. In the PDF, we discover that Alejandro used to work as a computer engineer for Tres Telecom. There really isn't much more that I could find on this, for now at least, so let's move on to his other previous job, Cinemartin. Turns out Cinemartin, which unsurprisingly Alejandro Martin was the head honcho of, is a company that rebrands cheap Chinese camera accessories, and as bad as that sounds, looking up reviews from people that actually got these devices who were into this hobby, they seem to know what they were getting with these products, and they review them with that in mind. So yes, even though it's believed that this is rebranded stock, it was cheap, and it did what it said on the tin. Heck, we even saw a terribly shot guerrilla-style video from a significantly younger Alejandro himself on his own YouTube channel showing off the devices randomly on some car bonnet in the middle of a Spanish high street. Now look, I'm not even going to pretend to know what I'm talking about when it comes to camera accessories, but from the very few reviews that I did see, again, it did what it said on the tin. It was cheap, and for the beginner, it was alright. Perhaps this is where he should have focused his energy, but sadly, this wasn't the case. Sadly, this is the Fran 8K camera. Where do I even begin? In short, after releasing several small camera add-ons and software add-ons, Cinemartin decided to get out of the shallow end of the pool and not only dive into the deep end, but do so from the highest diving board in the world as they attempted to develop an 8K camera. The Fran 8K camera wasn't something that anybody within the scene was actually expecting them to pull off, especially when this was the introduction video.
Hello, I'm Alejandro, and I'm going to introduce you in show Fran.
But, to their credit, they actually did make the camera. The only problem was, it was terrible. As seen by one of the only reviews of the product by respected YouTuber and camera nut Philip Bloom, who was less than kind about the device, and for good reason. It came in a beat up box. It was horrendously packaged and oh yeah, he couldn't actually get it to film anything. The full video that he uploaded trying to get his device to do anything beside just turn on is quite funny in retrospect, as Philip rips into the camera. It's worth pointing out at this point that Cinemartin had already posted on Facebook that they were declaring bankruptcy, so regardless of this review, it wasn't going to get released anyway. A post that was bombarded with comments from people that claim to never get their deposits back or get previous products from the company. It really was a massive failure. A story that shares quite a few similarities with this Super Sega scandal. So I'm going to leave it right here, in Alejandro's living room, where you see his beloved Sega Master System in the background, as he kicks off about Philip Bloom not knowing how to use a camera. For those that fancy finding out more about this, be sure to check out the videos in the description that discuss this failure in far more detail. This is the Fran 8K rabbit hole I'm currently falling down, and oh no, there's still quite a way to go. Whoa. You see, when looking up the dude's previous scam, I discovered his first YouTube channel.
Hi, we are going to California.
This was his first of many YouTube channels, and boy oh boy does it paint a strange picture into who this guy actually is.
We are going to California? Oh yeah. Okay, so we go to California.
From filming himself trying to pronounce California over and over again in his underwear
To California.
The dude's most popular videos are ones where he asks for help with error codes on his washing machine. Again, in his underwear. On behalf of everybody here at Slope's Game Room, sorry about that. The rest of the channel is just a mishmash of some of the most bizarre stuff I've ever seen. You got videos of Alejandro playing with his guitar, filming random dogs on the street, uploading vlog-style videos talking about future inventions. The dude also used to be a taxi driver, and you've got multiple videos of Alejandro driving around unsafely, singing with his passengers. And some videos are quite literally nothing, like he accidentally hit the record button and then just uploaded it to YouTube. You got the ones where he's chasing and filming cockroaches around his APT, and then sometimes he's just filming people from the other side of the street who, from what I can tell, have no idea that they're being filmed. Hey, look, maybe they're his friends, who knows? Still, it definitely does seem a bit creepy, doesn't it? At the end of the day, it gives a good insight into 2014-ish Alejandro. I don't think any video here had any comments on it besides that washing machine video, and practically every single video was just the file name uploaded. On one hand, you gotta give it to him. These were not made for anyone else. This is raw Alejandro footage for Alejandro and Alejandro alone, putting the U back into YouTube for better and for worse. Anyway, enough of all this, let's get back on track with the Super Sega. Actually, you know what? Before doing that, please hit the subscribe button. There, I said it. Hit the subscribe button. There, I said it again. Stories like this come along once in a blue moon, and collecting all of the evidence and editing videos like this one takes several months. I'm just one guy, and because of this I'm unable to create smaller, easier to make videos to feed the algorithm and help the channel grow, because I'm working on such a big video here, and obviously that means it does affect the bottom line. So please do, like I said, hit that subscribe button if you like the video so far. It really does help push the video out there. A big thanks to you for supporting the channel however you decide to do that. And of course, a big thanks to this video's sponsor, Saley. If you're like me and you enjoy travelling around as much as possible, I've even got a second channel dedicated to these trips in case you don't know, you'll understand the pain of not having internet readily available on those travels. I remember when I was in Florida a few years ago and I was unable to get internet on my phone. And because of this, every time we had Wi-Fi, I would have to load up Google Maps and set the destination on where we were going to go. And the few times we forgot to do that, it was hell. You would be going down the freeway, not knowing where to go. There are of course plenty of options to fix this, but I'm guessing that Saley is probably one of the easiest. You sign up when you're at home, it literally only takes a few minutes and boom, you've now got internet on your phone whilst you're on holiday. You've got over 150 countries available. I'm going to be using this myself when I go to Dubai in a couple of weeks, and whilst I'm there I'll have 24-hour support just in case I need it. And on the off chance that it doesn't work on your phone, maybe you got a 3210 or something, Saley will completely refund you. So what have you got to lose? Having internet when abroad in this day and age is essential. So if you want to be like me and not have to worry whether you'll be able to access internet on holiday, you can get exclusive 15% discounts on Saley data plans. All you gotta do is download the Saley app and use code SLOPEGR at the checkout. There's a QR code on the screen, there's a link down in the description. You know what you gotta do with these segments. So look, hey, massive thank you to you guys for supporting the show, and a big thanks to Saley for sponsoring this video. But for right now, let's get back to the Super Sega. After the release of that first proper introduction, multiple YouTubers and websites such as Time Extension started uploading their opinions on the new system, and across the board the reaction was, we need to see more and it's unlikely that anything will ever come from this.
It's really cool. I mean, to have all this stuff, if they just announced like all this right here, the SG-1000 Master System, Mega Drive Genesis, and maybe even like Sega CD, I'd be like, cool, man. Like, yeah, they're gonna get this going. But with Saturn and Dreamcast, I kind of am like, yeah, I really gotta wait and see. You know what I mean?
Eu não quero chover na praça dos caras aqui. Toda sorte a eles. Mas me cheira Polymega.
Ils sont moins chiants que Nintendo, mais je suis pas sûr qu'ils laissent le nom parce que le nom est la police Sega quand même.
If you're going to state that you have a few games running, just show it to people. It doesn't matter if it's at 4 frames per second. It doesn't matter if everything is graphically corrupted. People want to see, because when you just send out a paper release, 9 times out of 10, everyone that sees it is going to say vaporware, because that is what the most logical conclusion would be.
That last one, that was the YouTube channel Video Game Esoterica, a channel that's been covering this entire mess since the beginning. A channel that covers most new FPGA news in great detail, and a channel that at the beginning, although they were not happy with the fact that this was claiming a whole lot more than they were willing to show, was still keeping optimistic until they saw more. And as we move into July, we get our first proper interview with Alejandro's sister, Christina Burgess, over on the website Time Extension. In said interview, she humbly understands the criticism. It's natural to cast doubt over bold promises, nothing is certain in this life, but she does confirm that we'll be seeing prototype boards very soon. She also confirms that Alejandro has been designing hardware since he was 16, which, if his YouTube channel is anything to go by, yeah, sure. I believe that. The whole GD-ROM thing came up too, and she did admit that even though they are looking at the possible options regarding this, if they can't find one, then you'll be able to upload your ISOs via the DVD drive or the SD card as predicted. And then we get to the name. Putting all questionable hardware aside, it was the name that was always the most baffling thing about this project. How are they going to get away with releasing a console with that name and logo attached? No one has said anything to us about the Super Sega name, neither now nor 20 years ago when we launched the site. Wait. So the Super Sega name isn't a new thing? Ugh, time to start falling down that rabbit hole again. Yep, Super Sega was a website that Alejandro created 22 years ago, and via the Wayback Machine we can even see his little face in the corner. Hello Alejandro, hello! Now if we move forward to around 2007, when the site was at its peak, we can see that SuperSega.com's aim was to get people to sign up and get credits in order to download ROMs illegally? Well, that's up for debate. I can't be sure at this point if Alejandro ever provided the ROMs himself. I'm guessing maybe he did in the early days, but this was a peer-to-peer website that he was just providing. So, yep, frowned upon by the big companies, but technically not illegal? Either way, I bet my bottom dollar that SuperSega.com is not an official partner of Sega like the website suggests. Oh, not a good look, mate, especially considering you accepted donations from people who may have actually believed this. Now look, let's give this dude his due. I can't see anywhere where you actually had to buy these credits that you would use to download the ROMs, but instead, you got rewarded them for free by interacting in the forums. And yes, although that time extension interview did say that they had over 100,000 registered users, my guess is that the vast majority of those users are people that just signed up so they could quickly download Sonic the Hedgehog. As the forums themselves, which are obviously offline by this point, well, they look like they were filled with nothing but registered users complaining about the site. Like this person here who got their password sent to them. Weird, but okay. The only problem was that the password was so long it didn't fit in the password box. What the hell? Look, I get it. Back in 2007, everybody, including you, were downloading ROMs to be able to play those old games that they remember, using sites just like this. And I'm sure there was quite a few people out there that wanted to create their own website like this to build up a community. So fair play to Alejandro for actually going out there and actually doing this thing. But just like the Super Sega console, it looked like a questionable but somewhat cool idea that was horribly executed. And with that, let's continue on with the Super Sega console, shall we? That time extension interview was where we left it off. The interview that got confirmation that the team was aiming for a $400 to $450 price point, and that the team were reaching out to Sega in order to release the system officially with a few ROMs included. Similar to the officially released At Games consoles. Haha, yeah, good luck with that. It was around this time that the SuperSega.com website randomly went offline, but more important than that, on the official Super Sega YouTube channel, we got our first upload. Yep, that's the intro sound to the console. I'm sure Sega's going to be happy with that. Now, even though the description does read that the FPGA cores are not finalized, they do seem to be running quite well. Not 100%, which I must say at this point in development is to be expected. We do discover that you can also flash games onto empty cartridges too. Now that is impressive. Here's the interface for the system before you load up any games, showing that no game carts or CDs are in any of the slots. Alejandro loads up a game via an SD card. We see Bomberman on the Sega Saturn running mostly okay. The sound definitely seems a little off. Shinobi for the Master System looks mostly perfect, albeit stretched and a bit fuzzy. Golden Axe 2 for the Mega Drive is, unsurprisingly, the best looking of the bunch. And that's about it. Look, it's good that we get to see some gameplay footage here, but without seeing the device, who knows what we're actually looking at here? And without seeing any Dreamcast footage, who knows what we're looking at? This may just be emulation. And that was the opinion across the board. So to rectify this, just under a week later, we get more direct footage this time of the Dreamcast running games like Crazy Taxi, Gunbird and Street Fighter, and even though the footage they show off is slightly choppy, it is running far better than anyone in the scene at this point in time would have ever expected. You can hear that the microphone is on, although he doesn't say much of anything besides this.
Well,
there really isn't much else to bring up here except that on the last video he turned the comments off, and on this one he left them on. And it's in these comments that we discover that the system will have 2 HDMI outputs and 1 S-video out, as in a free RCA and a mini DIN connection, as seen on the Sega Saturn. The system will be region free, and unlike some other people, Alejandro, give him his due, does seem to not just say yes to everything. For instance, one commenter asks, can you get Naomi to run on the system? And Alejandro replies, no plans as of now. Naomi was not a home console, but after funding, if we reach production, code will be available to developers to do whatever possible with current hardware. In other words, if we can, we will, but no plans as of yet. this sort of response, ladies and gentlemen, is Slopes Game Room approved. And again, that is it. Although, if you go in the description, you will find yet another PDF. And boy, oh boy, are you ready to go down the rabbit hole once again. In said PDF, we get to hear more about Alejandro's previous work, including Quiz Total, which was a crossword creating program that Alejandro created. The translation is a little tricky on this one, but going by what he says, I believe he was sued due to the name of the program. Or, I don't know, maybe he sued someone else? Either way, it looks to be quite a popular program, getting upwards of 100,000 downloads. I tried to load it up myself, but you need to register via a website that no longer exists, so that's that really. We get to hear about groupabm.com, which is a throw it all in the kitchen sink sort of technology website that offers website development, search engine optimization, heck they even sell computers too. Nothing really of note here, so once again, moving on to his taxi service company, which he worked for part-time before going full-time with, and all of this you already know because we've already looked at his old YouTube channel. The PDF reads, this helped him earn enough money to start and develop products in the company with which he would achieve his greatest success. And again, I gotta give Alejandro his due. I'm all for people doing some proper hard graft to make their dreams a reality, so fair play to him. Except, of course, if those dreams involve creating the Super Sega and the Fran 8K camera. He talks more about cinemating also bringing up far more attention than he perhaps should to this entire ordeal, specifically calling out Philip Bloom and the haters that spread misinformation about his device. He claims in the PDF that Bloom didn't know how to turn it on and gave it a bad review because of this. Obviously we know that's completely false, and any quick glance at the video would easily showcase that Phil had it on, he just couldn't get it to function. Why you would spend a whole page of this PDF that's there to promote the Super Sega bringing up this issue you had with your previous company with Cinemartin, I'll never know, but don't worry, it gets better. You even have a lengthy paragraph talking about how he struggled to pay his mortgage, free loans for 2 cars and 1 taxi license, resulting in him having to sell everything that he owns. We then hear about a lawsuit with Mobile Network Free, who he is currently going up against in regards to his venture with Tres Telecom. Honestly, I don't really get this. It's something about merging 4K and 5K lines somehow. Again, I don't get this, it's not relevant to this video, and it's definitely not relevant to the Super Sega. Why you would spend time in this PDF putting off any possible investor, again, I'll never know. Which finally brings us to page 7 of 9, where he finally talks about the Super Sega. And honestly, there was very little new information here. Page 7 is entirely based on the old ROM sharing website, which had more than 50,000 registered users, significantly less than what his sister quoted over on Time Extension, I'd like to add. And then on page 8 we get 1 image and 1 line of text for the system itself. In 2024, the Super Sega FPGA console project, aka La Super Sega, is presented. And that's it. We do get to see some other team members though, so, you know, that's nice. Now, looking back at the old Super Sega website section of this PDF, you'll notice a link to another YouTube channel that we haven't looked at yet, and thankfully 1 month later he did get access to that channel, and now this is the new home of the Super Sega. Yep, that's the 4th channel so far in this story. And on that same day we got another email from the team promoting the move, as well as a couple more pictures and a line that reads, "We anticipate that there will be 2 models of Super Sega video game consoles. However, more news will be coming next month due to the mistrust the community has towards the project. But it is something that they completely understand. Also, the device is coming out in 2025. Strangely, on the same day, we get to see a video with nothing more than the Super Sega logo and a brief timeline. Literally no music, no sounds besides a little cough from Alejandro at the 20-second mark. And that's it. I think that the idea behind this was to let people know that were already subscribed to the channel that there's a new video. I mean, it had been 16 years since his last upload, but he didn't really have that many subscribers to begin with. And then we move into September. We get to see more CAD-like drawings dropped in our emails of version 0.9 apparently, with the physical prototype promised in 3 to 4 weeks. Oh, also, we get our first introduction of the pre-reservation that will cost €3 a pop and will get you 30% off the first batch at 300 to €350. Now, before going ahead, it's worth pointing out that none of this makes sense, because even if you did pre-order an ultra-scale FPGA Plus chip, you're not going to be able to get them, even in bulk, at this cheap rate when manufacturing these things. Video Game Esoterica, who once again covers this sort of hardware in greater detail than I understand, explains this brilliantly on his channel. He explains that not only will the Super Sega team need to sell this system at a loss at this price, but we still haven't seen the Dreamcast footage running properly on the device, as he warns watchers of his show to not put down the measly €3, as when they do, it's very likely that the company will take the full amount without warning. A couple of weeks later, after Time Extension declined Alejandro's offer for an interview, the YouTube channel Pixel Cherry Ninja managed to blag a one-on-one interview with him. And from that 40-minute interchange, we got the following information. We hear that it will only play some discs, which no doubt means that it will not play Dreamcast discs. Regarding those licensed Sega games that he wanted to add, which was brought up in that Time Extension interview, when he shares his screen, we discover that so far all he's done in this area is contact a few of Sega's top dogs via DM on LinkedIn. That was at the time the licensing coordinator for Sega, that's Sega's associate director of licensing, that's former co-host editor, no doubt to get some coverage, and that is obviously Sega Direct, all of which have not replied to him. Ladies and gentlemen, this is all he has done. For all you people out there wanting to get some licensed games on your Super Sega, it's not happening. When it came down to the technical questions, even though Alejandro was happy to share the latest image of the motherboard, which is, granted, a lot more populated with resistors and whatnot, as you would expect, he himself couldn't answer any technical questions.
So we've got a whole bunch of questions about CPU, GPU, audio, as well as the GD-ROM. So the first question is a little bit of a long one. So the SH4 CPU's FPU handles single precision floating point operations critical for 3D calculations. How will you ensure IEEE 754 compliance in your FPGA's FPU implementation? And what challenges do you anticipate in matching the exact precision and rounding behavior of the original hardware?
I'm not the core developer. We started with let me show, with this motherboard you see on the screen.
Okay, I was hoping to get some technical answers. I've actually prepared a whole bunch of questions specific to FPGA core development. Is it going to be an issue going through these questions?
Probably, not sure.
Okay.
We do, however, get to see the full breakdown of costs for the system, which shows that only the Plus model will feature the DVD drive. You know, the one that doesn't read GD-ROMs. Regarding the name, Alejandro says that Sega never bothered him regarding the website Super Sega, so surely it's not going to be an issue moving forward, and that is what he's basing this whole Sega branding on. So much for that Sega partnership, Super Sega. We also hear more regarding the pre-order details. We hear that the company will be using Stripe, and after the €3 has been taken, when the device is ready to ship, you'll get an email letting you know that the full amount will be taken, giving you 24 to 48 hours to decide if you want to continue. Sounds good. I might even get one myself. And true to his word, albeit a little later than originally planned, we got to see that prototype board in a now privatized video. Thankfully, this optimistic Spanish YouTuber did upload the video in full, and it's possibly the lowest quality video that's ever been uploaded to YouTube. Either way, we can see that two boards exist, one with a heatsink and the other is pretty bare bones. The email reads that they still have a few bits that they need to solder on, so expect an updated video very soon. We also hear that those pre-orders will start to be taken within the next few days, at the already confirmed €3, and finally, the video ends with him dropping these new, supposedly very expensive boards. At long last, we finally get to see those PCB boards that, once again, he drops. He doesn't bother re-recording, he just uploads it to YouTube. But hey, since when has professionalism ever gotten in the way of a good gaming announcement? Further proven on October 23rd, when we got a whole lot more information that once again raises way more questions than answers. Firstly, the email. An email with a super slick and slimy Alejandro in a white suit holding the Super Sega, giving an almost smug, "See, I told you it was real, look about it." The email reads, "In the video we show you the console board in operation, running several games, and we explain its components. On the website you'll find 2 buttons for those who want to make a pre-order. It will cost you €3, and if we put it into production you'll be sent a link in 2024 so that you can make the reservation. Pre-order it for €3 on the website supersega.com. Yep, just like before, he's given off the impression that if you put down your €3, eventually when this thing's ready to ship, you'll get a notification to let you know when the rest is coming out your bank. This is further backed up with the 2 pre-reserved explanation videos that Alejandro uploads, one for Spanish listeners and one for English listeners. Again, just gonna nail this home, he says that if you sign up for €3 and give authorization, they have the ability to take the full amount as and when they are ready to produce the system. But they did say if they only manage to get 50, 100 or even 200 people sign up, then they know that they will not have enough to continue on with the project, and therefore the remaining amount of money will not come out of your bank. But of course, if 500 or 1,000 people jump on board, then they will. I checked both the Spanish and the English versions, and yes, they both basically say the exact same thing. Unprofessional looking, sure, but at least he is being consistent. Right, let's look into the third video sent out on this email, which finally shows the device in action.
Hola chicos, soy Alejandro y os vengo a presentar la placa de SUPERSEGA. Bueno.
Dressed up like a greasy barbershop quartet after Alejandro waves the console in front of the screen wildly for a few minutes, pointing out all of the connections and controller ports, we see him booted up on a TV. Well, we assume he is, because in Alejandro's infinite wisdom, he's decided to sit like a 5-year-old directly in front of the TV, directly in front of the device itself. It's so badly shot and unprofessional, as you probably would have expected by this point. Heck, when he tries to load up that first game, the very first game I might add, it doesn't work. So he takes it out, gives it a blow, and tries again. Now, I get it, this is all to make it look more real and authentic, you know, zero editing. But that's all thrown out the window when he finally does load up that first game. Did you see it? I mean, I'm sure you did, it was really badly done, but, you know, just in case, let's play it again. Yep, between to load up the game and actually loading up the game, the footage is cut. Before, after. Before, after. The next game he tries out is the Master System F1 game, which again doesn't load up straight away, so he blows in the cartridge, struggles to get it in the slot, and boom, another cut. Granted, this one is a little harder to see, but it does happen. Let me zoom into a few different sections for you and then slow it down to make it easier to see. Before, after. Before, after. And then after playing the game quite badly and once again covering the console for the most part, something that could easily be fixed by just moving the camera more to the left, you'll notice that when he goes to reset the system, the speedometer in-game shoots up, possibly proving that multiple actions are happening at the same time when pushing a single button. It's all very, very odd and obviously very, very broken. And then sure enough, the same thing happens when he loads up a Mega Drive game too. Before, after, before, after. He loads up a Dreamcast game next via the memory card slot, and as expected, the same thing happens again. Before, after, before, after. Who knows why he did this? He didn't want to cut out the fact that he was blowing on cartridges, and even after he loaded up Gunbird 2, there was a long wait before the game actually started. If this was supposed to be raw, uncut footage, then why did he add the cuts? Well, to prove to the haters that were constantly asking this same question over and over in the comments, Alejandro uploaded a fourth video, again badly done, loading up a Saturn game with absolutely no cuts. He then plays a Master System game, and my god, just look at this dude trying to connect the cartridge to the board.
Ay, no está bien. No. 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 Disculpad, chicos. Ahora sí.
Just look at that. That's someone that wants you to pay hundreds of euros for this device. He's doing that, he doesn't bother re-recording it, he just uploads it to YouTube. It's absolutely embarrassing. Surprisingly, the comment section didn't moan about this video as much as you would expect, and the reason for this can be perfectly summed up with Super Sega's own comment on his own video. Comments from haters or people who continue to doubt are not welcome on this channel and will be deleted because they do not help anything other than generating distrust. Nice. Now, I'm guessing that the majority of the comments that he has deleted were the people that were asking the following. They were probably asking why the front USB port that the 360 was connected to didn't look like they were connected to the system itself, but instead they were connected to the back USB port, which for no real reason had a white USB coming out of it. In other words, the theory was that the PCB was nothing more than a USB pass-through, a glorified extension lead if you will, with the 360 controller connected to whatever this white USB was connected to behind the TV. Actually, you know what? Didn't the guy lean behind his TV to turn something on in the previous video too? Look. If my theory is correct, that theory being that all he's doing is just playing whatever is hidden behind that TV, you know, a laptop for instance, then maybe that will explain the double click of a mouse that you hear at the beginning of this video.
Si os fijáis, turbo más rápido el ventilador.
Did you hear that too? And yes, I did go back and it was missing from the previously uploaded direct capture footage that played the same intro sound. In other words, it wasn't part of the boot up sequence. No, it's not there, it's just here. For some reason, there's a double click of a mouse that starts up the software, the video maybe, and you only hear it in this video. Also, not to get too ahead of ourselves here, but Pixel Cherry Ninja and his team over on Discord did actually manage to snag a look at his quote-unquote blueprints from a now deleted video, and on that screen grab we can actually see a line drawn from the front USB to the back USB. Make of that what you will. Now, I would love to take credit for all of this myself, but to be honest, this is very much a collaborative effort. All of the information on the board specifically went well over my head, as it's not the sort of stuff that I cover, so a big shout out to channels that I've already mentioned, as well as the ex-user AshEvans81, who also noticed that the thumbnail, which YouTube automatically generates from a single frame of the video, is not featured in this video, meaning that this video has a beginning or an ending which has been cut off. Granted, they could have uploaded a different thumbnail, but this would have been the only video on the 4 channels that we've seen so far that would have done that. Also, and I'm not a technical whiz, so take this with a grain of salt, but according to Ash Evans 81 over on Twitter, you'll notice that the soldering on the HDMI out is so sloppy that several of the pins are actually stuck together. In other words, it simply wouldn't work. On the 23rd of October, Super Sega continued to upload videos all on the same couple of days, showing off different members of the team. Here's Fernando, and here's Alejandro's sister.
¿Eres de los nostálgicos? Ya tienes disponible la reserva de la nueva Super Sega. Te va a encantar.
Yep, that was the whole video. And she's back the very next day.
¿Eres de los nostálgicos? Ya puedes disfrutar de todas las consolas de Sega unidas en una, con la nueva Super Sega. Y no te estoy hablando de páginas para jugar online.
And guys, look, criticisms aside, I actually love this video. And I'm not joking when I say that, I genuinely love this video.
Los juegos de la gran mayoría de dispositivos que creó Sega originalmente. Haz ahora la reserva y rememora los 80 con la nueva Super Sega.
The choppy editing, the way they had the board obviously being hung up by a string, it's actually quite reminiscent of classic Sega pirate TV adverts from the 90s. Although my guess is that Sega did that on purpose and Super Sega most definitely did not. Obviously Alejandro wasn't a fan of people taking the out of his little sister, as the comments once again got turned off on this video. Over the next 2 days he uploaded AI altered versions for Japanese listeners and English listeners. Now I can't speak for the Japanese speaking folk, but the translations on the English version was just brilliant.
Are you one of those nostalgic? Now you can enjoy all Sega consoles joined together in one with the new Super C.
Sorry? What was that, darling? The Super C?
Book now and reminisce about the 80s with the new Super C.
What's the Super C? And because of this, plenty of channels had finally found out about the Super Sega. All of those people out there that were, slightly interested or being optimistic about the Super Sega, pretty much all of them were gone. And all was left was hilarity and just people taking the piss out of the Super Sega.
Are you ready? It's important to be as transparent as possible with any new product, especially in the FPGA space. And when you're trying to gather interest in it, having the video skip right before every single game load is a red flag for me.
Et c'est évident que si jamais c'est une arnaque, qui va aller porter plainte pour 3 €?
But it's very weird how they have this TV sitting on the desk like that. The TV is not on a stand, the TV is directly on the desk. And you can see that there's space behind the TV here, so I'm wondering what exactly is behind the TV. Is there a console? Is this thing not actually working?
で、もしもね、ここで予約したらどうなるかっていうと
The very next day we get another email and upload showing the new design of the Super Sega, this time without the CD drive, as according to the comments they are having issues in this department. So you may just have to load up ISOs via the memory card slot. The email claims that the first 200 pre-orders of €3 had already been placed and that they will stop when they hit 300. Crowdfunding for the Super Sega will begin either at the end of November or beginning of December, and the chance to put in your pre-order will end on November 4th. And then, a couple of days later, we get to see that new 3D printed case surrounding the board. Ah, isn't that nice? Now, the hardcore niche that have been following this project since the beginning may have noticed that I've actually skipped over a video. A video that was dropped and promoted via email that was released during the time when Alejandro's sister was releasing all of those videos. And this one, well, just take a look at this.
Soy un moñasí.
On October 16th, in order to gain more, praise, recognition, whatever from the general public, Alejandro uploaded a 5-minute montage of himself acting like a right numpty on a very low quality looking TV show called Tony Rivera and You. Yes, to the official Super Sega YouTube channel. What the hell is Spanish Robotnik doing here? Well, that's Tony Rivera, who is semi-famous in Spain, and this show that is filmed almost daily and played late at night features a vast mix of musical artists and actors. It's sort of like your typical talk show, but one with a very kooky twist, as you never know what caliber of guest they will invite onto the show. Sometimes it's famous people, and sometimes, well, I'll let their 2005 looking website explain the rest. Maybe we'll turn the show that night into a party, full of original, quirky, provocative, uninhibited characters. Freaks! Characters full of art by themselves, who can make us see life in a different way, take off their masks and show their true selves. Truly a spectacle for all senses. So, it's a real-life version of Dinner for Schmucks. A show aimed to worship some and ridicule everyone else. I wonder where Alejandro fits in. Anyway, enough of that. Because a few days later, we got another email promoting an upcoming video to YouTube which will be released later that day. It also states that over 200 pre-orders with commitment have been made, as in people that have authorised to let them take the money when and without question when they are ready to ship the console. And that pre-orders will end in just 2 days' time, after which a Kickstarter or Indiegogo will take over. And if that campaign doesn't reach its goal, or more than 100,000 euros or US dollars, then the company will only sell the 250 units to those that have already put down pre-orders. And then several hours later, we got to see Super Sega's second most popular video ever. In said video, we see Alejandro in a rather lush orange Lambo almost hit the entrance on his way in, as he then drives towards the camera, winds down his window screen and introduces himself and the worst tattered box you can imagine that houses the Super Sega.
Aquí os traigo la Super Sega.
He then goes to park the vehicle, blocking in a van in the process, and my god, check this out. After possibly smashing the door of the Lambo into the side of another parked car because he couldn't find the handbrake. I mean, seriously, listen to the audio as I zoom into this section. The door is not moving, then a horrid screech is made, and the door suddenly moves. Seriously, this is so embarrassing. He gets out and you can see him proudly sporting his failed Cinemartin Company t-shirt. Alejandro ushers his camera guy over, who is no doubt confused as to why they're not going to re-record all of this, as he then shows off his reskinned Cinemartin Chinese knockoff crap before finally reintroducing us to the Super Sega console that once again is housed inside the, I'm guessing the dirtiest old time capsule box that he could find, that's sitting on top of his wet Lamborghini roof. Seriously, once again, this is so embarrassing, and it all happens within the first 3 minutes of the video. It's like a parody, and it only gets worse from here on out. As we then make our way indoors, where Alejandro, again in his underwear, shows off the system with his signature shaky camera skills that you have come to expect. Yes, in his underwear. Now the big difference here from the first video is that we do get to see behind the TV, and on top of the worst DIY paint job ever, we get to see that no PC, USB, laptop or whatever is connected. But of course, and I know you're already thinking it, now we can't see inside the quote-unquote console that for whatever reason now has a super loud fan when turned on, which it didn't have before. Either way, this horrendously filmed footage from a guy in his underwear resetting a console with an Allen key was enough for me to put down a €3 deposit myself, literally 1 day before the pre-order ended. Now look, it's probably worth clarifying at this point, because I know I'm probably not coming off too great right now, that yes, even though I sadly did believe in previous systems that I've talked about on this channel, this one I definitely didn't believe in. I knew this wasn't going to go ahead since the very beginning. So why did I put down a €3 deposit? Well, I'm in a very unique situation. For me, this is a win-win scenario. Let's just say that this thing comes out and it was good or bad. I got something that I can show off on the channel, and in this instance, it will partially pay for itself. Plus, I am obsessed with weird, dodgy, crowd-funded consoles, so owning another one, as weird as this may sound, is my nectar. I actually would love to own one of these, whether it works or not, for the sheer obscurity of it. However, as we all know, this was a destined to flop project. So for me, putting down €3 was just a way to get closer to the creator of the project, to be able to create a video like the one you're watching right now. With that said, even I was shocked when I woke up the very next morning to find that the full amount had been taken from my bank. Yep, the full €420 was snatched in one full swoop, well before the system was ready to ship and without a single email asking me or informing me of such an amount being taken. But then again, that may be because when I signed up using my phone, I never had to put my email in. Granted, I hadn't had my morning coffee when I woke up that morning and randomly decided to put down that €3 pre-order. Maybe it auto-filled in my email, but I'm not sure that was the case. How were they going to be linking my money to me when they didn't even have my details? I decided that now was the perfect time to get in touch with Alejandro myself. Could you help me with something? From my recollection, when I made these payments, the website never asked for my address, my email, or anything. How will you know which pre-order is mine and where to send it?
We have your email address as the one who pre-ordered the unit. We will be in contact with you early 2025 for you to provide address.
Could you please give me more information, as I didn't need to put in my details when placing the deposit?
We currently don't need your address or any other thing apart your email.
How do you have my email attached to my payment if I never put my email in when paying for the system?
We don't know how Stripe fully works. Check the documents. You may have used your card in other purchases using your email.
Boy, oh boy, I'm brimming with confidence now. Was this a mistake on my part? Did the website automatically put in my email? Well, I did eventually get an answer to my question, and when I did, I got sent slightly a bit too much information, but more on that in a little bit. Because before all of that, a couple of weeks later we got another email showing off yet another new design, which was essentially the exact same as the one before, just longer so that it can fit in the CD drive. We get confirmation that the disk drive can read Mega CD and Saturn games, but it's unlikely that the Dreamcast will be functional unless, and I quote,
something magical happens.
We also get confirmation that the team will be going ahead with the production and that the crowdfunding campaign, most likely on Kickstarter, will be opening up by the end of the month or the beginning of December. We then get another email 7 minutes later as the team forgot to remove the pre-order gumph that was written at the bottom of the email. Nothing like some good old professionalism, am I right? We then get to see the new case in a silent video released several days later. He even puts the Sega Saturn game in the disk drive in order to show that you can, I don't know, put a disc into a disk drive? I don't know what the point of this was, as the system isn't even connected to a TV to show that it actually works. Oh, and regarding the power needed to run this thing, you'll remember back earlier this month when we became a little bit more than obsessed with whatever that white USB was doing on the back of the console. Is it connected to a Raspberry Pi, another console, or a laptop that's actually running the software? Well, according to Alejandro, supposedly that USB was needed to pump a much needed extra 5 volts into the system in order to boot up the fan. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case here in this video, does it? As you can hear the industrial sounding fan blasting away and no USB can be found coming out of the system. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, this further proves to me that the USB is nothing more than a pass-through, aka Spain's most expensive USB extension lead. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying all of this to then suddenly rug pull you guys later in the video and prove that I knew what was going on all along, because sadly, we still don't know what that white USB lead was doing. However, I'm sure you guys will agree that my theory is far more believable than the inconsistent videos that Alejandro constantly uploads. Regardless, with the project moving forward, Alejandro seems to have a new spring in his step, as seen here in this video that he sent to the Spanish YouTuber Spinecard TV, easily the biggest Spanish YouTuber that has been following this project step by step, and someone who Alejandro was getting more and more wound up with. According to the YouTuber, Alejandro also sent over plenty of audio clips when he was incredibly drunk. They were very hard to decipher, and since then Alejandro has deleted them. This is all we have left. He did, however, also send over the first ever screenshot of the box that the system will come in, which we also get to see in another exclusive video uploaded by that previously talked about Spanish YouTuber that I can't pronounce.
El anciano de la gruta y sus locas opiniones.
This one is done in a really peculiar way, and the disabled YouTuber, who was an optimistic supporter at the beginning, sees Alejandro's weird impersonation as a stab towards his disability.
Estoy yo aquí enseñar la consola que se acaba de volver.
Is this the case? Honestly, with the language barrier, it's incredibly hard for me to work out why he's putting on that stupid voice and acting extra stupid, even for Alejandro. But still, it's not a good look, is it? The same day Alejandro uploads his own videos saying that this Christmas you could get a Harley, or all of these Sega systems, or the Super Sega. Yes, this is the first official time that the system is shown off with its box, as in one that doesn't look like it was buried for several years waiting for Morgan Freeman to come out of jail and uncover it. But that isn't what caught my eye. What caught my eye was the price on everything. It's obvious that the majority of these machines and games have literally just been purchased, as most are still in their protective cling film with prices attached. And just in case anyone watching doesn't know the average price of retro games and retro consoles in this day and age, getting box systems like the Japanese V Saturn and SG-1000 and the Mark III are not cheap. They are luxury items in this day and age that do not really serve a purpose outside of just having one for the sake of having one for your collection. In this picture alone, and granted we don't know what's new and what's old, all we know is that the Master System is probably old because he had that all the way back in the Cinemartin days, my guess is that he spent around 2,000 to 3,000 euros on this stuff. The very next day we get an email confirming that the crowdfunding campaign will start within the next few days, but far more exciting than that, we get to see some genuine footage of the Super Sega being played by two independent third parties. All we gotta do is click here to watch the video. Okay. Once you've found the correct video, you see it start up with Alejandro's sister asking people who do not believe in the project to give them a chance before moving on to reviewer number 1. And just like all previous showcases, it's incredibly confusing. Alejandro is doing his typical give the camera to a 5-year-old routine dodgy camera work once again, as we see the system, this time with the infamous white lead going out the back and getting plugged into a nearby computer keyboard. Actually, you know what? I think there's more here than meets the eye. For those that don't know, some keyboards do have USB connectors attached to them. So in his defense, if this system only powers up properly when both a power lead and a USB lead are connected, then this keyboard connection may just be all he needs to get it up and running. That was the conclusion that quite a few people came to. The only problem with that is, 1, he already proved himself that this wasn't the case. You don't need the white USB to boot up the fan or whatever. And 2, I don't think that's the keyboard for this computer. I think that's the keyboard for this computer, and that this keyboard is connected not to the Super Sega, but instead whatever is hidden under the nativity diorama set that the new Super Sega box is trying to block. And our independent third-party reviewer here is having to deal with being in the way of the TV whilst he plays the games. Plus, it's definitely being used for something as it changes position multiple times in the video. And on top of that, it isn't even present when they do the unboxing at the beginning. Thankfully, due to Alejandro's erratic camera movements, we do sometimes get a glimpse behind the box of the white wire making its way back to the, come on, let's not kid ourselves, the laptop that's running the emulator underneath the TV that the keyboard is connected to, and voila, the illusion is broken. Now, let's just play devil's advocate here. Perhaps that laptop is only providing the Super Sega with just enough power to power the system. But if that's the case, why doesn't he just use the USB behind the TV? You don't need to bring your own laptop. You've shown us that this runs perfectly fine already by powering it from a TV, and you obviously know that by powering this from a laptop, you're going to get even more people distrusting you. And you also know that by adding cuts between choosing the game and loading up the game, we'll do the same thing. But you do that here too, don't you? Multiple times. And when they're not cutting away, they constantly move the camera away from the screen, so you never actually ever get to see a game load up from the menu into the game. But then again, perhaps looking at the side of this guy's head and that deprived dog outside is going to be far more interesting to your potential backers. Alejandro, whatever you're trying to hide, you're doing a terrible job of it. Also, props for getting a reviewer that doesn't know how to put a CD into a CD drive. Oh my god! Wow, that is painful to watch. I said it before and I'll say it again, this is absolutely embarrassing. And look, did you notice that after they push the CD down and connect it to the turntable spindle, that's the thing you connect it to right in the middle, thanks to all of the fumbling, they don't actually properly connect it to the turntable spindle, and you see it pop off as they close the drawer. In other words, this disc is not going to be readable. Oh no, my mistake. The Super Sega is so powerful that it can read discs that are not inserted correctly. Right, moving on to the second review. We once again can see that the system is turned on thanks to the little LEDs on the board, even though the white USB is not plugged in, but instead laying on the floor. That is until he starts demoing the games and you can see that the lead is now being pulled off screen, no doubt plugged into Alejandro's secret laptop. Why do that, Alejandro? Why not use the computer that's underneath the desk to power the Super Sega? What's so important about your laptop specifically that requires the Super Sega to be plugged into it? Also, why is the HDMI lead going down under the table, and why does the same HDMI lead, or possibly another HDMI lead, come in from the right? Why is there a keyboard in shot at the beginning of the video, and why does it then disappear once you've booted it up? Yet again, as always, these videos raise more questions than answers. Oh, would you look at that? Another jump cut. Seriously, this is so... Look, hang on, I can't just keep saying this. Hang on. So bewildering. Yes, sure, okay. Alejandro, you are bewildering. If I were you, mate, I wouldn't quit your day job. That is, unless your day job is painting you and your mates' houses. Yeah, you might want to quit that too. Oh, and one more thing before moving on. That first reviewer is believed to be Alejandro's brother-in-law, aka his sister's partner, as seen in the picture in the background whilst Alejandro jumps around like a kid with a VTech camera. So much for this being an independent third-party review, mate. Who's this guy? Your adopted son? And what's even more bizarre is that in a later live stream of Spine Cards, Alejandro calls in, again, all live on air, and tries to convince us all that that wasn't his brother-in-law, even though we all know that it is. And it gets even crazier because later in that same live stream, the lawyer calls up, Alejandro's lawyer, and tries to convince Spine Card that it's perfectly fine for Super Sega to use the Sega name. You cannot make this up. And look, even though it is quite hard to follow if you don't speak Spanish, I do highly suggest you go over, chuck on the auto subs and listen to these guys battle it out. It's genuinely quite insane. Obviously that big booted lawyer didn't get very far with his fight against Sega to allow them to use the Sega name freely in the Super Sega name, because a few days later, Super Sega emailed to let us know that Sega had asked them to shut the whole project down. Bizarrely, or not so bizarrely I suppose by this point, that email not only shows the cease and desist from Sega but their supposed response too. Let's start with the cease and desist. Assuming that this is all legit, Sega has asked for Super Sega to cease all sales of the system. Remove the branding on absolutely everything from the console to the printing on the box and even the social media websites. Report the number of units manufactured or sold and inform Sega of any and all suppliers and distributors. Destroy all existing stock and finally, permanently cancel the domain name. Bit strange considering they were an official partner back in the day, right? I don't think I need to go into detail as to why Sega did this. It's the first thing in this story that makes total sense. Thankfully for the 300 hardcore Super Sega fans, the email links to another time extension article where Alejandro has told the news site that he will consider the name change, but production will not stop unless Sega is prepared to cover cost expenses and what consumers paid. And if Sega doesn't agree, then goddammit they'll go and do it anyway. Good luck with that. There's a lot wrong with this project. I think we can all agree on that. But for me, the one thing I've never really understood, and you can see it in multiple places, from this email for instance, is why Alejandro seems so up for essentially promoting websites like Time Extension who have never said a good thing about them. It's almost like he's trying to warn you himself that he is a scammer. The same thought process can be applied to that Spanish YouTuber Spinecard TV, who's been the biggest thorn in Alejandro's side. For now at least. He's been creating constant videos calling out Alejandro, yet for some reason, Alejandro promotes his videos in his emails too. In the video linked in this email, Spinecard can be seen reacting to a video from Alejandro showing why the fan is so loud by connecting only the 5-volt USB lead, which is enough power to power that part of the machine. This time he connects that USB to a wall socket and not a badly hidden laptop, and for whatever reason he doesn't connect the main power supply to the console either. In my opinion, this once again further proves my theory that the USB is nothing more than a pass-through to a computer that plays the emulated video games. However, in his defense, it does prove that the pass-through can also power the fan on the console too. As the camera spins around into selfie mode, we get to see Alejandro's spooky silhouette tell us that he thinks it's unreasonable for Sega to request so much money from him. But he does confirm that after speaking with his lawyer that they will likely continue once they've changed the name. You know, that same lawyer who was arguing with Spinecard TV telling him that Super Sega could easily use the Sega name. That lawyer. And regarding his response that he was going to send back to Sega, well, it's not worth the virtual paper that it's not printed on. In a nutshell, Alejandro agrees to change the name of the console. All he asks is for Sega to give him time in order to do so, and to also compensate him for this change. Again, good luck. I honestly don't know how much of this got changed before it was sent out, as he never updated us regarding this. Either way, ignore all of that, because 2 days later, Alejandro uploads a music video about a Spanish Formula 1 driver. No, really? Why the world of Super Sega needs to see this, I will never understand. Alejandro is a super odd person, and in his mind, for whatever reason, he thought that this video was the perfect way to let people know in the description that he has sent his response to Sega and that they will have 14 days to respond. Also, according to that description, there are 3 people working on Super Sega and they all have Martin as part of their name. And Martin J. Bromley was one of Sega's founders. What? So what? Just because your name is slightly similar to one of Sega's founders, we're all supposed to blindly trust you? A whole 8 days fell off the calendar before we heard from Alejandro again, and this time it was thanks to Ian Lee, who managed to snag himself an interview. And as usual, it's pure craziness. During the interview, Alejandro runs off to do some cooking and pour some beer. God, look at the head on that! And he even lights up a cigarette. I cannot suggest you watch this interview enough. I've done plenty of interviews during my time on YouTube. Never have they been as crazy as this. I gotta say, I'm a little jealous. Honestly, by this point it doesn't give us much more that we don't already know. He claims that the boards have now gone off to be manufactured, so that's nice. Even though he claims that several components still do not work on the prototype, so I don't know how that's possible. And he does show what's beneath the fan this time, which we had already seen in that thumbnail that was accidentally left on the video thumbnail before. Now, it's worth bringing up at this point that behind the scenes, I'd been in close contact with Ian up to this point. We met a year or so prior at a gaming expo and we became quite good chums. Ian had obviously already started speaking to Alejandro in order to set up this interview, and honestly, I wanted to do the same thing. The initial plan for me was a little up in the air, so to speak, and it went like this. 1. The top desire was quite literally to fly to Spain in order to pick up the Super Sega myself. Spoiler alert, this sadly didn't happen. Failing that, 2. I planned to interview Alejandro myself for supporters of the show, which I could then use in this very video. Again, sorry to disappoint, but that never happened either. Which finally leads us to my third backup plan. 3. Start a conversation up with Alejandro and then share that conversation with all of you lovely people. With his permission, of course, which I did get. And boy, oh boy, I had no idea what I was signing up for. It took a while before he replied, and at one point I was worried that he wouldn't, but considering he'd been sending extremely random clips to significantly smaller YouTubers, I knew I had to give it a shot. And even though he did take his sweet time replying to me, he did upload another music video for his adoring fans. The song was called Animo and was performed by his band The Good Yes, and God yes, it is as brilliantly corny as you would expect. Sadly, I probably shouldn't play the video here for obvious copyright reasons, but if you do want to go check out the video, it will be down in the description. But before you do, the description on this music video, which features Alejandro performing next to a leaking drain pipe, basically says that they are still waiting for Sega's response on if the project will be going ahead or not. And to all you people out there who do not believe him, time will tell. Turns out we didn't need to wait too long, as 3 days later we discovered that Super Sega is getting renamed to SUPERSEGA. Spagay? Oh, it's supposed to be Super SPGA, isn't it? As in Sega Programmable Gate Array. Yeah, I see what you did there. I mean, obviously that doesn't work, as an FPGA chip, which again stands for Field Programmable Gate Array, is called this because they consist of an array of programmable logic blocks that can be configured in the field. What they don't consist of is an array of programmable logic blocks that can be configured in the Sega. What does that even mean? With the name change, the Super Sega website started linking to the new Super SPGA website. And as I'm sure you will all agree, this is not what Sega was going for. What does the second S in Super SPGA stand for again? Yeah, I'm pretty sure Sega will not be having any of this. Further proven on the 23rd of December, when we got another email. Yep, turns out Sega are not happy with the name change and they're still pushing for all of the systems to be destroyed. On top of this, Alejandro's advocate was asking for a 5-figure fee in order to continue working with them. What does this mean? Well, a lot of news sites and people that were covering this thought that it was Sega that was asking for the 5-figure sum, but in actual fact, it was his legal representative. The same guy who was trying to convince Spinecard that Sega will be fine with the Super Sega branding. He was an old friend of Alejandro's who just so happened to have a legal background working presumably for free up to this point, who had had enough of the crazed uploads and embarrassing situations that Alejandro was constantly putting him in. Simply put, if Alejandro wanted his legal representative to continue working with Super Sega, he would have to pay a 5-figure sum. And because of all this, he confirms that refunds are now being processed. Ladies and gentlemen, the Super Sega console is now officially dead. By the way, did you notice the date? It's Christmas Eve. So understandably, it's going to be taking a few extra days for those refunds to get processed this close to Christmas. However, never fear, because if you were not lucky enough to get a refund, Alejandro suggests you go to your bank and request a chargeback.
To be clear, we did not scam anyone.
Well, you're not scamming anyone in particular, but you are kind of now scamming the banks. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I did eventually get my money back, kind of, via this chargeback method. And in Alejandro's defense, he wanted to make sure that I did, offering up advice on how I and others would go about doing that. But just to be clear, just because he is telling people how to go about getting a chargeback, that doesn't mean that he is the one giving the money back. The banks are on his behalf. In other words, quite simply, and if I'm not mistaken, this is fraud. And look, for me personally, this isn't even the worst thing he did. The email did continue by saying he was going to sell his Lamborghini in order to cover damages, losses and legal costs, and the email ends with Alejandro's impersonation of the Terminator. If that character was played by porn icon Ron Jeremy, that is. We'll be back. It's not who you are, it's who you know. He then promises an update by early 2025. And boy oh boy was he not lying. You see, the 23rd of December was finally the day that he replied back to me. He confirmed that refunds had been made by showing his bank account, which is 134,000 euros in debt, with the following message.
Refunds has been done. Please confirm me if you received the money back. Thank you.
And unsurprisingly, that money hadn't gone into my bank. Still, I took this opportunity to ask Alejandro if I could quite literally fly to Spain, pay him in person for one of these boards before they get destroyed. To which he responded, "Are you one of these?" And that link goes to the Guns N' Roses song, One in a Million. And if you don't remember how that song goes, here's a WhatsApp voice note of Alejandro singing it that he sent me.
Aye, aye, you're one in a million, you're a shooting star.
What this has to do with anything, I'll never know. But still, he continued to send me, a guy who he had never properly spoken to before today, clips of him singing.
There's no time, nothing like you, the time.
Sounds like you are celebrating. He then responded with the following video that although he has given me authority to share everything between us, I'm going to go ahead and censor out his personal details that supposedly shows that not only has the entire 134,000 euros been deducted from his, I guess his Stripe account, but also his bank account has a single cent in it and no more.
But I have no €1.
I gotta be honest, by this point, and call me a pushover all you want, but I started to get worried about Alejandro. It was very, very obvious that this guy wasn't in the right state mentally. Ian and I had been sharing information for the longest time, from videos of Alejandro cooking to screenshots of Alejandro and his lawyer falling out over WhatsApp. We both deep down thought that this was a scam, but at the same time, it definitely left us feeling uncomfortable. Thankfully, the next day on Christmas Eve, it was all systems go once again as the project was back on. A Christmas miracle, Time Extension joked, as Alejandro sends the following screenshot claiming that Sega has now sent another email apologising for the previous one, and that they're now fine with Super Sega, Super SPGA, whatever you want to call it, and they suggest that they continue on with the project.
Esto no me lo esperaba, recibido hoy a las 19:22 horas.
This Spanish audio clip was then sent of Alejandro absolutely freaking out with this information, whilst you can hear his mum in the background screaming at him that his dinner's ready. Seriously.
Estoy alucinando. Estoy alucinando. Pero...
Cuando estamos cenando,
Ay.
se buena y no te quiero ir.
And then on Christmas Day, Spinecard once again manages to get on a call with Alejandro and quite bluntly calls him out over his several lies up to this point. Alejandro had already asked for Spinecard to pay him for an exclusive interview, which Spinecard refused due to those constant lies he had received up to that point. But before the call was terminated, he managed to get him to confirm that the final board is complete. Another big fat lie. Now, like I said, leading up to this point, Ian and myself have been in contact quite a bit, talking to Alejandro behind the scenes. And on the 27th of December, that all stopped. Alejandro disappeared. Normally, when you send Alejandro a message, WhatsApp would normally show that he received it, and then 9 times out of 10, he's pretty quick in reading it. But neither of our messages from this date were getting through at all. As we moved into the new year, neither of us could get hold of Alejandro anymore. The messages weren't even being received. So in a desperate attempt, Ian decided to reach out to Fernando, another Super Sega team member, and he too couldn't get hold of Alejandro. Hello Ian, nice to talk to you. I've also not been able to contact Alejandro either by WhatsApp or by email. Maybe something has happened to him, or he's on vacation. I suggest we wait a while. If I contact Alejandro, I will inform you. Told you there was cause for concern. Thankfully, only a few days later, we finally did get to hear from Alejandro again, from a completely different number for whatever reason. And this was the message that we got. Hang on. That's not the right music to go with this picture. That's much better. Just imagine the angle that Alejandro would have had to have been in to take that picture. Here's the voice clip that went alongside it.
I'm still chatting with some guys that did not receive the money. I can tell you that we are counting about between 4, 5, 6, 7,000 euros as much.
Okay, look, I'm not going to bore you with the incredible I can't come to work today voice acting. Essentially what he's saying is he's been in hospital for the last few days and yeah, there's only a few people that he's got to sort refunds out for. And when I say refunds, what I actually mean is chargebacks paid for by the bank and not Alejandro. Amazing. He is still claiming that hundreds of people that paid for the system got their refunds instantly, and it was just less than 15 people, remember that number, who are left and who he is personally helping in order to get those chargebacks. To prove his innocence in this arena, screenshots are sent again of his bank or his Stripe account that shows he has no money. But again, this doesn't actually prove anything. All it proves is that he's down 134,000 euros. He then gets out of his deathbed, lights up a cigarette, and sends videos of Afterburner working on an original Master System to prove that his console works. Which again, obviously, proves absolutely nothing. What? What has this got to do with anything? Here's a Dreamcast. Here's a game. If I put the Dreamcast game into the Dreamcast, does this now mean I got a refund? What? Obviously by this point we all know that the Super Sega doesn't exist. What we're interested in at this point are those refunds. No matter how much we asked, we could never get him to send us proof of anyone ever getting a refund. He was sending over information of some random individual in Spain that was getting a chargeback, but again, a chargeback is not a refund. We could never get any refund proof ever. And once again, not to go forward too much in our timeline, but we've never found anyone that's ever had a refund. Between myself, Ian, Time Extension and Video Game Esoterica, we know of 10, possibly 11 people that put money down, all of which have had to do chargebacks to get their money back. In his defense, he did send over an extremely illegal banking screenshot showing 12 different half cut off names, the last 4 digits of their card, what type of card they used when they put down the pre-order, whether they were refunded or partially refunded. Obviously I'm not going to be showing you this screenshot myself, but yeah, this is crazy incriminating. This obscure and obviously AI-created theme tune for the SUPERSEGA Scandal was released on the 26th of December, featuring a slideshow of pictures of Alejandro driving sports cars and what have you. And for those wondering what the lyrics are, I've had them translated. Feel free to pause the screen now if you want to sing along. Up to this point, it continued. Myself and Ian had been speaking to Alejandro and Fernando behind the scenes, who were sending random screenshots and voice clips, telling us that they're going to prove their innocence and us very wrong very soon. Almost all of these clips just came out of nowhere, and we never ever asked for or were in relation to what we were talking about. But still, hey, gotta thank him for all the content, right? At one point, Fernando sends me over all of these answers to questions that I never asked, and then we quickly worked out that they were actually supposed to be sent to Ian and not me. Seriously, this whole thing was a massive circus. During this time, like I said, I also got my chargeback for the money that I put down for the SUPERSEGA. Thankfully, I am now officially not down any money whatsoever for the SUPERSEGA system. As I continued to speak to Alejandro behind the scenes, he asked me if I got my money back via the chargeback. He was actually very concerned, making sure that I definitely did get my money back. I told him that I did via the chargeback method. He asked for me to send him over an email. I do, but he struggles to find it on his database.
Hi, Slow. I cannot verify if you received your money. Can you send me a screenshot or something that proves that you get back your 420 euros? Did you pay in UK pounds, US dollars or euros? It's just for me to verify that you get your money back. And I'll just award to get an interview. Thanks.
So I sent over the confirmation that I got from the bank, this exact screenshot, which I've obviously removed any personal details on.
Please understand me that we don't want to keep any money from anyone. And just for me to make sure that you receive back your money. So something like a screenshot or something that I can say, okay, then for sure we can make an interview with you.
He then sends over another incriminating GDPR melting screenshot that I said I wouldn't share. And look, I am a man of my word, but once again, I'm going to describe it to you. It shows a folder with super at the top, and in said folder you see 7 chargeback disputes. Some are counting down until he loses the dispute, and some he's already lost intentionally, I suppose. More on this in a little bit. Because now that I've got my refund, my chargeback, Alejandro finally agreed to do that interview with me. The only problem was that if we did do an interview, it had to be uploaded in full and unedited onto this main channel. This left me in a tough spot. Look, my intention was always to upload the video unedited, the interview unedited, but I only wanted to do it after this video was uploaded. And the reason for that was the Amico. Being a part of that scam was a huge eye-opener. If you haven't seen the video yet, then click up here to watch it. It's quite the deep dive. But what I learned from that whole saga was that just by talking about the project, and worse still, giving Alejandro a platform to sell his product like I did with Tommy Tallarico, no matter how negative I would have been towards the Super Sega, I would have been sharing information on this system to probably the biggest audience that Alejandro would likely ever get. I didn't want to give him the opportunity to scam my audience. Hence why I've been very much involved with the Super Sega scam since the beginning, but I've been lurking in the background, only talking about it right now when I release this video. As you would expect, Alejandro was not best pleased with my non-public interview plans, especially after he had had a few beers and started to look at my channel, which I think may have just been the first time he realised what most of my popular videos were based on. Scammers.
Replying to you, but by seconds, bitch, not by dick. No, wait a moment, but all of your videos tell things about scammers and so on, but you know, we are not scammers. So let me continue watching your audio from yesterday, bitch. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I got a whole heap of these. Obviously the dude is crazy drunk, and obviously with the language barrier it's even harder than usual to work out exactly what he's saying. Also, weirdly, whenever he gets drunk he calls me, and Ian for some reason, Mike. He knows our names, but for some reason calling us Mike was just hilarious to him.
Sorry, Mike. I'm under the circumstances of drunk. Like that.
Hang on. Did he just say what I think he said?
Replying to you, but by seconds, bitch, not by dick, bitch. Sorry, Mike.
Nah, surely not. It's obviously just a language barrier thing. Anyway, he then tried to convince me to join in on an interview that he was having with another channel, some Spanish channel, with him and Fernando. And obviously, I didn't want to do that. In fact, by this point, I wasn't even interested in having an interview with him anymore. Based on previous interviews, I knew that I wasn't exactly going to be getting anything new from Alejandro. He's either going to lie or say that he's not the technical person. Hey, look, if an interview happens, it happens, but I'm not going to be losing any sleep over it, especially if he is forcing me to release it unedited in full before I release this video, which would potentially scam my audience. To be honest, I had everything I needed for this video, and the worst is yet to come. Anyway, it's January 24th, and today was the day of that Spanish interview, and as of the recording of this video, this was the final ever interview that Alejandro ever did. Interestingly, all of the previous night's drunken messages were suddenly getting deleted when I woke up and checked my WhatsApp, as Alejandro's team, aka Fernando, had advised him not to do an interview with me. Look, fair enough, I get it. If I was in your shoes, I wouldn't be doing an interview with me either. Look, I had what I needed, I left the ball in his court, and I just got together working, collecting all of this evidence so I could create this video. Alejandro, it was great chatting last night. I'm free to do an interview in the evening, this Thursday, Friday, or at the weekend. Let me know what's the best time for you. He doesn't reply to my request, but he does send me the Spanish interview that he did later that day, which I gotta say, did feel a bit like he was trying to rub it in. And honestly, at the time, I couldn't make head nor tail of it. Not only is it in Spanish, with 3 people talking over each other multiple times, but Alejandro's audio quality is so low and echo heavy that YouTube's auto-translate couldn't pick up most of what he was saying. So I sent it off to my translator who'd been helping me out throughout this entire ordeal, and I went about making this video. Which brings me on to my final day, a day that's going to wrap this whole thing up nice and scammy. Out of the blue, I get another message from Alejandro.
Hi, Mike. DNA. Or mechanics. Oh, great. When do you want to make an interview, Mike? But could you collaborate with me? Let me know. I have no money, even for buy a tobacco or a drink.
Ah, great. He's drunk again. It took a while to work out what was being said here as I was out at the time, but basically after a bit of back and forth, I worked out that he finally wanted to do that interview with me. Today. The only problem was, he wanted me to pay him for the privilege, just like he did with Spinecard in the past.
I have no money. Well, until Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't even have enough to buy tobacco, some drinks, or even to buy food. I've been supporting you like the rest of the people in order to get your money back. You're asking me for an interview on YouTube free for all, but which for sure that if having hundreds of thousands of subscribers, as Ian told me, will give you some cash and blah blah blah. So in a way, you collaborate with my personal situation while I collaborate with your audience.
I gotta be honest. Once again, I really wasn't that bothered about the interview. What I was interested in was getting his authorization to use these WhatsApp messages. Obviously you got this one screenshot that I'd said to him I wouldn't share. I'm a man of my word, I'm not gonna share it. But I wanted his authorization on everything else. To which he agreed. And then I gracefully denied to pay him. Why? Well, I had finally got the translated bullet points back from that Spanish interview from my translator. In the interview that was more unhinged than any before it, with Alejandro drunk as a skunk, playing poker and barely answering any worthwhile questions, acting like a complete class clown. Heck, he even made this weird Charlie Chaplin video that played after the interview of him cooking a shoe. Like he's boiling it, then he puts it in the oven and cooks it, then he takes it out and then he takes off the shoelaces and pretends to eat it. I think the idea here is to show that he hasn't got any money, but he's just spent the last hour gambling and getting drunk, so... But what caught my ear was what he said at the 21-minute mark of that Spanish interview, whilst the camera was pointed directly at his crutch. Thankfully, he wasn't in his underwear at this point. Here, take a listen.
Mira, hay una que me diga por el culo del señor López, un tal D-A-N-O, digamos, como la polla. Porque le digo que es un my dick.
Alejandro, ¿no te importaría...
Este viene de Villa,
Yeah. Turns out he did say that about me. Here's exactly what my translator managed to translate.
Mira, hay una que me diga por el culo del señor López, un tal D-A-N-O, digamos, como la polla. Porque le digo que es un my dick.
Alejandro, ¿no te importaría...
Este viene de Villa,
Well. Thank you very much, Alejandro. You know what? I'm going to respectfully decline your offer to pay you money for me to interview you. And instead, what I'm going to do is wrap this whole thing up with no love lost. Let everyone know what you have been up to. Remember how I said we struggled to find anyone other than the 10 or 11 people that got chargebacks, even though according to Alejandro, they sold between 200 and 300 units? Alejandro? That's a lie, isn't it? Seriously, what proof have we got that he ever sold that amount in the first place? Besides the occasional email and interview where he says that was the case. Not to brag, and honestly, I'm not bragging when I say this, I've got quite a big audience. So when I put out the feelers asking if anyone ever got a refund for the Super Sega, I put it out on all of my socials and my community tab. How many responses did I get? A big fat 0. Ian Lee, again, a very well-known figure in the community, also asked, and never had anyone come back either. Video Game Esoterica did get a few people come to him, but again, they're the people that we've already mentioned. That's the 10 or 11 people that we've collected together that have had to request for chargebacks. I've watched every single spine card video, every single Pixel Cherry Ninja video, I've read every time extension article, heck, I think I've watched every single video in date order since the beginning of this whole saga, and I've never found anyone that's ever done a video talking about their pre-order like you would expect with any other niche retro device. Simply put, where are all the people that pre-ordered this thing? I'll tell you where. They don't exist. Remember that screenshot I said I wouldn't share with you guys? I'm still a man of my word. I'm not going to share it. The Stripe account, it says Super Sega at the top. You can see 7 of the chargebacks in obviously a much bigger folder. Well, upon reflection, I had another look. And what did I notice? Right down in the bottom left-hand corner, 19 resultados, aka 19 results, aka 19 disputes. Why is this important? Because it proves to us that he's had access to these numbers since the beginning. So when he says he thinks he's sold somewhere between 200 and 300 and he's only got 10 or 15 chargebacks, this screenshot not only proves that he actually has more chargebacks than that, but again, he's had access to these numbers since the beginning, and he has purposefully not given them to us. He's happy to share crazy incriminating screenshots, but not these exact numbers. Why? Is it because he's actually sold a whole lot less than he claims to have sold? Personally, I think so. My theory is he didn't get enough pre-orders to manufacture this thing. And he even said this in a previous message. If he doesn't get enough pre-orders, he won't be able to manufacture this thing. I think he probably did have the intentions to finish all of this off, even though the system was barely functional to begin with. As the saying goes, fake it until you make it. But that is me, and I really shouldn't be doing this after what he said about me and said to me, but that's me giving him the benefit of the doubt. But Dan, what about that 134,000 euros? Look, maybe there's going to be another 200 to 300 people that pre-ordered this thing that several fairly well-known figures and sites in the retro gaming community have never ever found. Maybe these individuals didn't want to set up a Facebook group, a Discord group, or even a subreddit, which is what all of these small pockets of niche communities always do when a new system comes out or gets announced. Hey, maybe this video will be filled with 300 comments from all of those unknown backers that have been hiding in the shadows up to this point. But I'm guessing that it won't. Look, nobody can tell you where that money went. I'm just theorizing here, I'm speculating, this is my opinion. Nobody can tell you for sure. Well, nobody except for Alejandro, the guy that throughout this whole scandal is seen driving around in Lambos and Harleys, buying up super expensive game collections, getting drunk at every possible opportunity, gambling, and of course, creating the Super Sega board itself. Whatever that is. Oh no, no, no. This was going to be the original ending, but sadly, it isn't. After I declined to pay Alejandro for the interview, several things happened. 1. He kept sending me drunken messages before deleting them the next morning. 2. Super Sega got a brand new lease of life as a much cheaper emulation system was suggested by some unknown Chinese investment company. Look, if anything comes from this, then perhaps I'll make another video one day, but honestly, I doubt anything will ever come from this. And then 3, I got another email from my bank saying that Super Sega are contesting my chargeback. Yep. Turns out they want they want my money back. Time Extension have been incredibly helpful with documenting this entire saga from the beginning. So as a little thank you to them, I decided to send over this congested chargeback scoop, if you will, as a little thank you. They, of course, ran with the story, and as predicted, Alejandro went a little bit mental. Alejandro decided to try and shame me. He sent out a couple of emails to his entire mailing list of, I don't know, potentially thousands of people, showing screenshots of our conversations proving that I did get my charge back. Of course, as you all know, this is true. I did get my charge back, but since then it has been disputed. Oh, and if you're wondering what all of these big red squares are over these screenshots, those are covering up my email, my bank card details, and my phone number. My personal phone number. Again, this email went out to potentially thousands of people. And it wasn't just my details in there. You know what this is? This is a screenshot of his Stripe account, and underneath those red boxes that I have put in there, you have the emails of several people, mine included, that put down the pre-order. Now granted, they have been partially scribbled over, but as seen in my demonstration, he only scribbled over the second part of the email. You can easily work out several emails from this screenshot, and you can also work out every single name because for whatever reason, he decided not to scribble that part out. But let's push all of this incriminating stuff to one side, shall we? Because you know what else this screenshot is? It's another version of that screenshot that he asked me not to show anyone. The only difference is he has decided to scribble out what I mentioned before. Down in the bottom left, he has badly scribbled out resultados. I have been obsessing over this screenshot for way longer than I should. At first I assumed that he covered up the number 19, but unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case, as when I line up both this and my secret screenshot that I'm not allowed to share, they don't line up. This is a different number. But never fear, I've been doing some more detective work and I think I know what the number is. Firstly, I had to find the correct font. When Googling, I discovered that several standardized fonts are used for building websites and are all very similar, but thankfully for us it's the number 1 and 9 which differentiate them. Some of the 1s have a line at the bottom and the 9s have different curvatures to the bottom too. I decided that the font's Roboto was what was being used here, and thankfully the Chargeback above shows us both a 1 and a 9 in bold, so I can easily compare them for you without sharing my secret screenshot. So, with that, now that we have our font, you can see that both the number 19 and whatever is badly scribbled out here do not line up. In actual fact, this number looks longer. Does this mean that it's in fact 3 digits long, proving that he has indeed sold at the very least 100 units? I don't think so. You see, I think all of this extra yellow squiggliness is done to deceive us. Again, when comparing with my secret screenshot and when looking up my own Stripe account online, it seems that everything on this page, from the collapsible menu at the top, every check mark and every single letter, all perfectly lines up. And yes, that also includes whatever the results are at the bottom of the screenshot. So, in my opinion, all of this extra squiggle guff to the left was just put in there to deceive us and make us think that the number is actually bigger than what it actually is. So let's get rid of that. Ah yes, that's much better. This now finally allows us to work out exactly where the number starts, and from that we can try out multiple different combinations until we land on the number 23. Now, the big question. Why does this screenshot sent on March 15th say 23, whilst my secret screenshot sent January 27th, 47 days prior, say 19? Honestly, I don't know. Obviously it's significantly less than the 200 to 300 units that he claims to have sold, and it's almost double the 10 to 15 chargebacks that he claims that he had. And both numbers are of course extremely close. I personally still believe that he has sold significantly less than he claims to have sold, as once again we have never found anyone that has ever had a refund, but once again, maybe I'm wrong. As always, everything sent out by Alejandro just raises more questions than answers. This is as far as my investigation work can possibly go with what we have so far. So, I'm going to leave it with you and ask, what do you think happened here? Is this the end for the Super Sega? Who knows? Will we ever hear from Alejandro again? Again, who knows? But Alejandro, and I know you're watching this, you just doxed me. And that is highly illegal. And we have potentially thousands of people that can back it up. So, will we hear from you again? I don't know. But this is definitely not the last you'll be hearing from me.
I wanna take you for a ride. 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 I wanna take you for a
Woo! And that, ladies and gentlemen, is... wow, that was the Super Sega Scandal. Now, don't go anywhere, because there is still more to talk about. More things have happened since I've made this video, which we will get into. But before we do that, look, let me say a few thank yous. Yes, I'm going to make you sit through some of the thank yous because... I mean, I couldn't have made this video without these awesome people. Look, Ian Lee, Video Game Esoterica, the team over at Time Extension, Pixel Cherry Ninja, Spinecard, never spoken to you before, mate, but want to jump on a chat or whatever, reach out, happy to do so. Without these people, I could not have made this video. These guys have been documenting this since the very beginning, so as well as the evidence that I've discovered throughout this whole thing, these guys have been a huge help as well. Links down in the description, go and support them, and everyone else as well, people like Mr. Sajano, Mad Little Pixel, RGT85, Spawnwave, all of these other people that have also been documenting this along the way. It's great for me as I'm doing a timelined piece like this video to get people's opinion as it's going along. It's been so fascinating, and look, without all of you people documenting this stuff, it really does help videos like this. It gives it some heart, so thank you so much, very much appreciated. Also, a massive shout out to Saley, who sponsored this video. Get yourself 15% off when you're on holiday. Use SlopeGR in the checkout. Get yourself those internet when abroad. It's very much a worthwhile thing, and I'm going to be using it myself when I go away on holidays in the future. Yeah, that Florida story, that wasn't fake. That was a genuine nightmare we had out in Florida, and I got charged loads for it as well. Charged to not be able to access the internet. It was terrible. So thank you, Saley. Now, also, a massive thank you to Featurecast. Now, if you don't know who Featurecast is, he's the guy that made one of the greatest video game soundtracks of all time for Final Vendetta. Incredible soundtrack. He also had a track on Jet Set Radio. Not many people realise that. The original Jet Set Radio. And he also is working on that new Terminator 2 2D game with Bitmap Bureau. Incredible DJ, incredible producer, one of my favourites. And he was the guy I went to with my my terrible mashup of the EastEnders theme tune and Take You For A Ride, which I'm hoping you heard in this video. I hope I haven't had to censor that out. But yeah, he was the guy that fixed that. It shouldn't have worked. It was out of key. He said, look, this ain't going to work. And it kind of doesn't, but at the same time, it's like a gag mashup, right? And he was the guy that helped make that. So thank you very much. And finally, a huge shout out goes to Bipedal Studios. Now, I never shout out Kickstarters, but I'm going to shout out this guy's Kickstarter. He hasn't asked me to, but these are the guys that helped translate all of the dodgy stuff that was sent to me, interviews and everything else. Huge thank you to these guys. Want to get yourself some new NES, Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games? There's a Kickstarter for it, and yeah, I can't thank you guys enough. Go and show these guys some love by doing that thing. Thank you. Yeah, and I think that's all of the thank yous for now, apart from the Patreons and YouTube members, these guys that you see down here. And the reason I'm giving them guys extra love in this video is because I haven't been able to release a video for about a month and a half. That's really affected the bottom line for me. Like, I'm being honest with you guys. Like, I can pump out smaller 10-minute videos, you know, just to be able to bring in the constant flow of money and feed the algorithm, keep YouTube happy with the fact that I'm releasing these constant videos. But making a video like this takes an incredibly long. I've been working on this for months, and it's because of these guys. People always say that can't do it without the patrons or YouTube members. They're the backbone. These guys are. I'm not just saying it. These guys are. Without these people, I wouldn't have been able to make this video. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Get yourself over there if you want to be a supporter of the show. Get access to the password zone. You'll see videos like this early. You'll see extended versions of some of my videos. You'll see director's cut ones that I've had to censor for YouTube. They're all in there, and there's crazy amounts of exclusive content as well. I'm going to make some exclusive content for this video. In fact, I'm going to be reaching out to some of the people I've already mentioned to try and do a commentary watch along of this to release exclusively for supporters of the show. So that will be going up hopefully within the next week, just finding out who we're going to be able to get in on that call. Now, as well as my patrons and YouTube members seeing this early, I also sent over this video to a few other key members in the industry just to get their opinions on it, and one person in particular, they want to stay anonymous, that's fine, gave their opinion, their theory, not fact, but their opinion on what's been going on with the whole chargeback and the fact that he's only got 1 cent in his bank account thing. And the reason this person is a worthwhile person to listen to is because they are a manager of a particular company that has used Stripe in the past and has had to deal with a chargeback, a single chargeback though, just the one. Yeah. Let me explain what goes down here in a little bit more detail from this one person. And again, this is just theory. This is just speculation, whatever you want to say. What I'm saying is this isn't fact, just covering my own back here. Now, when I put down this pre-order with my credit card, that gave me the ability to be able to get a chargeback. Obviously, I requested a chargeback, and what that meant is my bank then went to Stripe, not Alejandro. It went to Stripe and requested the 420 euros back. Now, as a business, you don't want this to happen, because not only will my bank request the 420 euros, they'll also request a bit more on top of that as a fee to them. So 20, 30, 40, 50 euros, whatever it may be. Every bank's different, blah, blah, blah. So they request this money. As you know, I did get that money back. And for the record, I still have that money back. This whole contested thing, the fight is back. The bank is fighting this on my behalf. I still have the money back. We'll see what happens. Now, with Stripe being down the 420 euros plus fees, they're now going to request that money from Alejandro. Alejandro's only got 1 cent in his bank account. Now, again, this is all theory, this isn't fact, but throughout the process of him earning money from this, from the amounts being taken from people like me and the other people in this, that money would have been presumably going into Alejandro's bank account. Where does that money go from there? That's anyone's guess. Lambos, Harleys, maybe he's moved it to another bank account so that when Stripe are down 420 euros plus fees and they request it from Alejandro, he hasn't got any money in his bank account, he's got 1 single cent, he cannot pay them back. I'll let you fill in the rest there. Yeah, it's another thing to think about with all of this, and the reason I'm telling you all of this is so that you guys can come to your own conclusion, because at this point in time we don't know specifically, we probably never will know specifically where the money went. And there you go, there's something to think about. The only other thing I want to talk about is this one new update that Spinecard has talked about. But before I do, let's give some shout out to some patrons and YouTube members. Let's give a shout out to Winning at Self-Defeat, JM, Sir Nilsson, Derekuda, Akatimo84, Ian Quell, Arista, Dina81, Mind of the Unsane, Proto Rock, British Video Game Nerd, Keiju Samurai 1985, Boots and Pup, The Sneaky Ferret, Vitus Varnes, James, The Action Saxon, Jay is Manchild, Mike Fallon, Nicholas Bertner, Chev Matic, Jabba Al Aiden, Richard Aldrich, Shadow Dragon, Dina, Yelled Hamburger, Jeff Mianowski, Bram Perez, Conrad Constantine, Andrew Dalton, Retro to Next Gen aka Lou, Paul Float, and Ryan Burford. Thank you. Could not have done this video without you. Now, the only other thing, like I said, that I want to talk about here is the latest video from Spinecard. This has happened since I've made this video. It was released like 7 days ago, something like that. He had managed to get hold of someone that wasn't able to get a chargeback. Maybe they use a different type of card, like a debit card, and they haven't been able to get a refund. This individual, supposedly, again, just covering my own back here, but supposedly they have been in contact with Alejandro, and Alejandro hasn't got this money to refund them. And he's basically just said to them, look, nothing I can do. Just go to the police, go and make a report if you want. Not good, eh? It's really, really... Are the police going to do much on 420 euros? Maybe if enough people go ahead, they will, but I don't think he made enough sales for that to... what a terrible, terrible situation. Look, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so, so much for your support. Go and support those people I said down below, especially Spinecard. Yes, it's in Spanish, but you can put the auto subs on, and some of those videos are insane. Thank you guys so, so much for your support. Very much appreciated. And look, until next time, this is DJ Slope signing out, and hopefully I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.